As the last ice age ended, the glaciers slowly retreated. With them moved the great herds and the hunters who followed. These were the very first humans in Scandinavia. They were nomadic hunters, specialists in big game such as reindeer, mammoths, and woolly rhinoceroses. Genetic studies suggest that many of these pioneers had blue eyes, dark hair, and skin resembling today's Southern Europeans or North Africans. They entered what is now Scania, what at the time was connected to continental Europe by a land bridge. The land they met was Arctic tundra, and beyond it, bordered by an immense wall of ice, 2,000 meters high, even 3,000 meters in some places. And the remains of that ancient ice sheet still survive as glaciers in northern Sweden. As the ice withdrew and melted, the ground began to rise, a process called post-glacial rebound that still makes Sweden grow a little larger each year. These first humans would not stay at first. These hunters visited only seasonally. They crossed the land bridge during the warmer months, then withdrew south for the winter. But at one point, they decided to stay all year. They might be called the first Swedes, though the name would not exist for thousands of years. We do not know what language these early people spoke. Perhaps some lost ancestor of later European tongues. They were descendants of populations that had spread across Europe about 30,000 years earlier. Men averaged roughly 160 centimeters in height, women about 150. They traveled in small bands of 3 to 6 families, carrying everything they owned. Over time, larger groups formed tribes and more stable communities. Their diet was broad, eating everything they could get their hands on. Clams, birds, reindeer, mushrooms, berries, nuts, and anything else they could gather or hunt. These early tribes developed their own customs. One that is proven is funerals, where substantial evidence exists. It shows how people lived their lives. A grave found in 1939 held a woman buried 8,800 years ago with several objects. Analysis shows she had borne children. Archaeologists have found dog graves, either together with a human or alone. These dog graves often had objects and the same honor bestowed upon as human graves. With every passing millennia, the physical traits shifted. Gradually, the population developed the lighter skin, blue eyes, and blonde hair, traits that dominate among native Swedes today. After a brief cold spell between 8,000 and 7,000 BC, the climate became warmer, similar to the modern France or southern England. Pelicans and even turtles lived in Sweden during this period. Rock carvings marked the earliest Swedish art. By about 6,000 BC, historians estimate that some 10,000 people lived within what is now Sweden. Around 6,000 BC, a new group of settlers arrived from Europe with new knowledge: farming. Their arrival may also have caused tensions with local hunter and gatherers. Although there is little evidence of violent clashes, conflict probably occurred. However, negotiations may have solved most disputes. Another theory holds that the native hunters adopted agriculture through contact with individual farmers from the south, rather than through large-scale replacement. Permanent settlements began to appear across the landscape. Populations grew as more children survived infancy. The first farmers started to leave traces in Sweden. Yet, archaeological and genetic studies show that farmers and foragers remained separate communities for nearly 1,000 years before gradually intermarrying. Many Swedes today carry ancestry from both groups. A new kind of burial also appeared. Large stone graves known as megalithgravar, including dösar and gånggrifter, such as Gillhög's passage grave. Some tombs were carefully aligned with the sunrise in late autumn, when the link between the living and the dead was thought to be the weakest. These monuments demonstrated status and power, and their builders played an increasingly important role in rituals and ceremonies. Some evidence even suggests that human sacrifice was part of their spiritual life. Around 4500 BC, yet another group entered Sweden, marking the beginning of the end of the Stone Age. These people brought a new age, and archaeologists call them the battle axe culture. Their name comes from the stone battle axe placed in their graves. These axes were not meant for combat, but were symbols of status and prestige. They came to dominate much of southern Sweden. They introduced new tools and knowledge, consumed milk far more than earlier peoples, and spoke an early branch of the Indo-European language family. They also brought new materials such as copper and wool, and a new religion. Within only a few centuries, these newcomers ruled the land. A new part of Swedish history begins where metals and valuables takes a bigger place. Their burials suggest that they organized themselves into what we might call chiefdoms, often led by a powerful man. They were also deeply religious, with cult and ceremonial sites that still leave traces today. At one site, dated about 3000 BC, more than 800 wooden poles had been driven into the bottom of a lake, probably a place of offerings. At roughly the same time, in the far north, the ancestors of the Sami were beginning to emerge as a distinct people. Around 1700 BC, the Bronze Age begins in Sweden. It had begun in southern Europe several centuries earlier, but now it arrived in the north. It brought enormous changes to society, the economy, and culture. It would last for well over 1,000 years. As with earlier times, there are no written sources from this era, so we depend on archaeology, especially graves and hällristningar, rock carvings. These reveal how bronze reshaped life in Sweden. Society became organized around a chieftain and his lands. The chief sought to control people, trade, and everything around him. Bronze is an alloy of copper and tin, and neither metal was mined in Sweden at the time. Every single bronze object had to be imported or made from imported raw materials. Copper probably came from what is now Austria or Hungary, while tin arrived from Britain. Despite the long distances, Sweden prospered, and the most advanced societies so far began to take shape. The first workshops appeared, producing bronze tools, weapons, and ornaments. For the first time, something like an industry developed. Organized trade expanded throughout Europe and the Nordic countries. And before long, mining also began in Sweden. Many bronze artifacts remain stunning even today, matching modern craftsmanship. Bronze was literally the metal that fueled society as a whole. Bronze objects displayed status and power. We began to see clear social distinctions, as people used crafted items to differentiate themselves from each other or people in a non-powerful situation. An upper class had wide connections all over Europe, controlled the trade and transport of materials, while most people remained farmers. But goods were not the only things exchanged. Men usually stayed in their home regions, while women often traveled long distances, for example, from present-day Germany to marry into Swedish tribes. German groups, in turn, obtained women from even farther south. This system of alliances was well established. The main means of transport at this time was via boat and ship. It is the most used means of travel and also the fastest. We know that Swedish traders and travelers reached Britain, northern and western France, and even northern Spain. These journeys aimed mainly at trade. Sailing to England could take 15 to 20 days, and to Spain about 30 days, if all went well. Traders also traveled up the rivers of Germany. Another type of commerce was the slave trade. Slaves would be used as tradable commodities or as workforce at home. Without them, the Bronze Age economy might have stagnated. The climate remained mild, and the people began cultivating new crops with higher yields. That meant more time for trade, metalworking, and specialized crafts. Thousands of graves from this period have been found, over 10,000 across Sweden. One of the most impressive lies in Kivik. It has many items and depictions of its time. Its carvings depicts priests, horses, and carts, the sun, axes, and men blowing horns. The scene suggests an important theme in Bronze Age belief: duality and balance. Everything came in pairs, life and death, light and darkness. Perhaps by offering a two of everything, people hoped not to disturb that balance. As always with unwritten history, scholars debate many details. By about 1100 BC, we see the rise of kingdoms in Sweden. One such realm is marked by the royal burial sites at Håga in Uppland, where a great mound still dominates the landscape. As usual, the graves give us information about the time. We can see that the rich and powerful has become even more so than the last 6 centuries. Many of the items found in the grave indicates how rich this king must have been. Finds from Håga include not only bronze, but also gold, the richest treasure from this time. This period marks the beginning of the people later known as the Svear. These kings ruled much as before, maintaining wide trade links with Europe. Similar centers existed on the west coast at Tanum and at Kivik in Scania, where society continued along lines established centuries earlier. By around 800 BC, these emerging kingdoms were at their height. During these centuries, we see signs of warfare and the struggle to become the largest and richest realm in the north. A distinct group appears, the warriors. Yet society was about to shift once more. A new metal was coming: iron. Around 500 BC, scientists estimate that about 100,000 to 110,000 people lived within what is now Sweden. Iron is plentiful in the north. It began to replace bronze in tools and weapons. As iron spread, the trade networks and power centers built on bronze started to fade, and the status of individuals shifted. Iron improved every part of life: farming, cooking, and above all, warfare. Even though the bronze trade declined, the north did not become isolated. Ancient Mediterranean civilizations began to mention the lands beyond Germania. At this time, we see that one civilization starts to influence society in the north. Over the centuries, as the Roman Republic and later the Roman Empire expanded, trade and travel gradually turned toward Rome. From about 1 AD to 400 AD, Roman influence reached farther into Sweden. Imported goods and Roman farming tools spread to northern Europe, improving agriculture. Objects of Roman origin are often found in Scandinavia in graves and contexts of higher social status. together with other prestige items. In 98 AD, the Roman historian Tacitus wrote about Germania. His father had governed Britain and met travelers who had traveled amongst the barbarians in Germania. Tacitus mentions a people north of Germania called the Suenes. Tacitus describes them as mighty warriors and excellent shipbuilders. Many scholars think he meant the Svear, as the ships he describes match those found in Sweden. Nearby lived the Feni, who may have been ancestors of the Sami or Finns. After Tacitus, northern tribes disappeared from Britain's sources until the migration period. Then the Byzantine historian Procopius mentioned a vast land called Thule, perhaps 10 times larger than Britain. There lived the Geats and 12 other tribes, each led by its own king. Again, the long winters were noted, as well as a devotion to the sun. During the migration period, many northerners would travel to the Roman Empire with one purpose: to join its army. There they learned methods of warfare unknown in their homeland, skills they later used in conflicts with their neighbors. Besides knowledge, these men would bring valuables back with them, such as coins. Many of these coins were melted down and recast into local ornaments. These travels gave these men a lot of status when they returned home. One example is the so-called Joredsmannen, who copied Roman coins but replaced the emperor's face with his own. Later, we also see that the northerners imported a lot of glassware to their home countries. During this time, we also see that the first alphabet is created in Sweden, the runes. The Kilverstone preserves one of the oldest rune rows we know. These runes were created by someone familiar with Latin letters, then adapted to fit Nordic sounds and society. By the late 5th and early 6th centuries, something shifted. The Western Roman Empire collapsed. The steady flow of gold and coins stopped, and trade networks broke apart. Society in the north suffered. Unrest and probably war spread. On Öland, at Sandby Castle, we find traces of a violent night attack. An entire settlement destroyed, its people massacred. Many victims seem to have once fought in the Roman army. Civilians were killed too. The attackers remain unknown, perhaps rivals seeking control of the island. Thus ended Sweden's early Iron Age, around 500 AD. But on the horizon, a new storm gathered, one that would bring death, but also the birth of one of history's most famous peoples, the Vikings.